I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Doman, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset.
Okay, today on Pro Mindset, we have Dr. Gregory Charlop. Gregory, welcome to the show today.
Craig, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, boss. Can I call you Doc? Can I call you Greg? What's your nickname?
Well, I have a column, Ask Dr. Greg, so you can go Dr. Greg or Greg, whatever makes you feel good.
Okay, I think Dr. Greg makes me feel good. Okay, so why don't you share for our audience your space in the performance world?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. So I'm a physician, and I focus mostly on wellness medicine for athletes and retired athletes. So I work with a lot of pro and retired athletes, and we focus on things like physical health, like diet and supplements, sleep, that type of thing, mental health, depression, anxiety, mindset, gratitude. And the goal, we also talk a bit about sexual health and also performance medicine. So things that you could do to sort of physically and mentally improve your performance in sports and in life in general.
Okay, so Dr. Greg, let's focus on the mental space at the moment. Let's look at former NFL players, former pros, even former college athletes, and their careers are over. But their careers are not over because they had a ticker tape parade, they got a Harley Davidson motorcycle. No, they were over because a team called them in and said, sign this termination notice, turn in your equipment, clean out your locker. Depression smacks these guys right in the face. How do you help a young man who's still maybe 28, 30? I just had a client yesterday get terminated. He's been with the same organization for 8 years. He's never been with another organization. And this is the first day he woke up in his NFL career where he didn't have a job. What do you do to help people in those situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you, this is actually really common. And a lot of athletes, and I think particularly retired athletes, and we really see this a lot with football players, a lot of them struggle with depression and mental health. And that's often, I think, made worse because of the fact that, number one, many of these folks don't really feel comfortable asking for help. So if they're struggling, they often struggle alone. Number two, a lot of folks, especially in the NFL, but certain other sports, you'll see it in soccer and hockey and other things, if people have had concussions, we know for sure that having a history of concussions makes you more likely to have things like depression, anxiety, and mental health problems in the future. And then, sports like team sports, like football, a lot of those become your identity. I sort of joke about this, and I'm sure you see this. If you're a kid in high school or in college and your goal is to make it into the NFL, you're not thinking, well, I'm going to play football and I'll do what I can, and then when it's done, I'll be an accountant. For most people, there isn't a plan B. It's football or bust. So your sport is, in a sense, your identity for a lot of people. So once you're not in that sport anymore, it almost feels like you've lost your identity. You've lost your reason for being, and on top of that, you've lost your brothers in arms. You've lost your support system of the people you play with, and you don't have your coaches there anymore, and so this is very difficult. And so I see this a lot, and then it's compounded, with these concussions and everything else. And I think honestly, a lot of people that are successful in sports, they're convinced they're going to be successful. The idea of failing doesn't occur to them until kind of the day that shoe drops and they're not playing anymore. So what I'll tell you is the first thing is you have to remind everybody that they're not alone. that even though they're not on a team anymore, they still have a support system. They still have their friends, they have their family, the people that stuck by them. A lot of them still have relationships with their coaches or their agents or their former teammates. I think especially their college teammates. And they need to talk to people. That's one big thing. And then the next thing is kind of realizing that you're not adrift. You know, that what I found, I'm sure you see the same thing, is that if you have the skills to be successful in sports, you have the skills to be successful in life. And anyone who could go through the grind of practice and getting up early and traveling and missing out on fun stuff because you're at the gym or you're practicing for a game, anyone who has that kind of determination, they have what it takes to succeed at other things. They just have to be reminded that they have those tools.
Dr. Greg, that gave me goosebumps. That's one of the things that's a message that needs to be heard by professional athletes and even college athletes that are not going to play in the pros, that they got what it takes. All that practice and discipline and sacrifice and preparation, it's teaching them priceless skills, invaluable skills that are going to pay dividends in whatever they choose to do in Act 2 of their life.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, I'll tell you, so I work with athletes, and I've worked with a few former SEALs. And, you know, these people, they do all these incredible things that I would never be able to do. I'm not an athlete. I work with athletes, but I'm not one myself. And there's no way that I would be able to make the sacrifices that these folks have made to get where they are. And that level of dedication is really very good. And I'll tell you, I'm not a career coach, but I know a lot of people that are these, you know, there's a whole sort of industry, I guess, of people that help athletes change to new careers. And I often refer athletes to career coaches, and it's amazing the stuff that these athletes will do. A lot of them, they'll become investors and venture capitalists. A lot of athletes will start businesses, or they'll be consultants. So there's just so much that an athlete can do, and they have so much more drive than the average person that really the world is theirs once they've kind of convinced themselves to go out there and try something new.
No doubt about it. Okay, so let's talk about depression. Let's say there's somebody out there that's listening, or someone out there listening knows a former athlete that's depressed. What are the typical signs of depression from your perspective?
Good. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm happy you asked it because, you know, a lot of people don't really understand what depression is. And depression isn't that you're having a down day. You know, maybe you lost the game, you know, yesterday, and now you're upset about it. That's not depression. Depression is kind of a longer term thing, and it's a serious mental health issue. So the common things we see with depression, and the key here that I want to say is not everybody has all of these things. All right. So just because you may not have some of the things I'm mentioning doesn't mean that you don't have depression. But the common things you see with depression are, number one, things that used to make you happy don't really make you happy anymore. Maybe you liked hanging out with your spouse or your kids. Now that doesn't make you happy. You liked playing ball with the guys. You don't like that anymore. You like traveling. Now it doesn't seem worthwhile. So things that used to bring you happiness don't do that anymore. Another thing is people like an unusual relationship with food. Either you're eating a lot less than you used to, or you're eating a lot more than you used to. Sleep. Either you're sleeping a lot more or a lot less than you used to. Your sleep is messed up. Hopefully.
Okay, Dr. Greg, you're making me feel bad. I've got 3 for 3. Keep going.
So feeling hopeless is a big one. So, you know, a lot of times you could be down, but you think, well, things will get better tomorrow or they'll get better next week. But if you think, well, things aren't going to get better, it's only going to get worse, that's a big symptom. Feeling of suicide, of course, if you feel like maybe things would be better if you just killed yourself, obviously that's a symptom of depression. And low energy, easy irritability. People with depression often could get angry very easily. So if you find that you're fighting with people a lot more than you used to, Those could all be signs of depression. And you know where people go wrong is sometimes people will have a job. Maybe someone listening now, they're actually a successful football or basketball player. You could actually be successful in your job and still have depression. Just because you're functioning in life doesn't mean you don't have depression. You know, a lot of us, we have this image that someone who's depressed is basically lying in bed all day eating ice cream. And that isn't how it is. You know, there's plenty of people, they're successful lawyers or agents or coaches or players, but they have depression.
Okay, so let's say, for example, Dr. Greg, that an athlete out there, a former athlete, has 3 or 4 of these issues. What's the next step?
So the next step is it's important to actually, well, 2 things. Number one, it's important to get a diagnosis. You want to speak to a professional who could actually do something in depth and really figure out if you actually have depression or not. And there's some good tests and good ways to kind of figure it out. And so my first recommendation is to go speak to a mental health professional. And it could be a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a therapist, someone who's trained in this. And, you know, one of the great things these days, and this is one of the few good things that's come out of COVID, is that now there's this whole thing called telemedicine. This is actually something I do, telemedicine. And the way it works is you could actually speak to someone without leaving your house. You have a video visit. And there's a lot of great ways that you can speak to a therapist or a psychiatrist or psychologist, and you don't have to go in someone's office. You could just do it from your living room, which is great. So I recommend, number one, speaking to a therapist. But number 2, you need to kind of speak to your network and make sure that you get re-engaged with life. This is a very important thing. You know, we all have some people that make us feel good, that make us feel better. Maybe it's our parents, or it's a coach or a teacher that meant something to us, or a best friend. You want to speak to someone like that, people that make you feel good. And we also have people around us that don't really make us feel good. You know, maybe they're competitors, or maybe they're jealous of us, or we're jealous of them, or something like that. So you want to kind of cut those people out and spend time with people that make us feel good. But none of that really can replace speaking to a trained professional, which you absolutely must do.
Okay, so I don't think a lot of people thought about false positives until COVID hit, and there was a big debate early in the process about the reliability of the testing. Well, how often, so as it pertains to depression and the symptoms that you described, how often could you have all of these things but not be depressed?
Excellent question. That's a good one. No one, I like that. You ask good questions. No one's asked me that one before. So the basic premise of depression is that you have most of those things, although, like I said, not all of them, and you've had them for some time. And usually it's because there isn't a clear explanation for it. For example, say your best friend was just killed in a car accident yesterday, and now today you don't feel like eating. Maybe the last week, now a week has gone by, you're not sleeping well, you don't feel like eating, you don't want to go out to the club. Maybe you've even thought, if he's dead, you want to be dead too. You might have those thoughts, but that doesn't make you depressed because there's a clear cause and you haven't had it for that long. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't get help because sometimes things could happen, like someone getting killed in a car accident, and you should seek help for that. But that doesn't mean you have clinical depression. So to have clinical depression, you typically need to have these things for a while, and usually there isn't a clear explanation. Usually it just is. You just don't want to wake up and do anything. You don't think the day is going to be good. You've kind of given up on life. There's no clear cause. If there is a clear cause, again, I would speak to people about it, but that may not necessarily be depression. You just got cut from the football team last week, and now you're down. That's normal. Most people would feel that way. So I wouldn't. That would probably be a false positive if something like that happened.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're going to bounce around a little bit and go back to one of my favorite words is identity. And you talked about the fact that most elite performers, professional athletes, it's, NFL or bust. They don't have a plan B. How does a player or a competitor put in his mind or her mind that, yes, I am a football player, yes, I'm a baseball player, whatever sport they play, and make sure they've got all 10 toes and 10 fingers all in on their sport? Because, NFL scouts will tell you as soon as a player starts thinking about plan B becomes their new plan A. So how do you keep 100% of your focus, and yet when it is taken away prematurely, because no player ever sees it coming, have the ability to transform your identity into plan B when you need it?
Great question. And I agree with you, honestly. I think that if you are, say, in college and your goal is to get to the NFL, you can't really be thinking too much, well, maybe I'll be an accountant. It's funny to joke about it, but the truth is, you're right. Like, the NFL has to be your plan A, B, C, and D. So the question is, how do you prepare yourself if you don't make it in the NFL or you play a couple seasons and you're cut? What do you do? And there's two big tips I give to people. Number one is you don't necessarily need to have a plan B, but you want to educate yourself about other things. Even elite NFL players, they have some downtime. You're not playing football and practicing 24/7. So during those downtimes, learn other skills. Learn about money and investing. Learn about different, not necessarily you want to go into different careers, but at least learn other life skills. Maybe go to school, take classes, read books, expose yourself to other things. This is good because it enriches your mind and makes you a better person, but it also kind of prepares you that there's a bigger world out there and there's lots of cool stuff to do, and you'll kind of feel more mentally comfortable doing that. And the second thing, and I think this is really important, is, yeah, you're out there, and even though the NFL is your plan A, B, and C, you have to remind yourself why you're playing. You're playing, partly, of course, you like football, but you're also playing because you love to win, or you love your family and you want to make your family proud, or your friends do it and you have camaraderie with other people. We all have motivations for why we do things. So yes, you're a football player, and that in many ways defines you. Your motivation for why you're doing things defines you. And I want to give you a personal example because I deal with this all the time. I work from home most of the time. And so, like most people, my kids are home too. And so I've got a bunch of projects I'm trying to do. In fact, I'm trying to get this big sort of charity thing off the ground now to help women athletes. And so I'm putting a lot of time into this. But my kids come to me sometime and they're having some trouble with their homework. And I'll be honest with you, my first reaction sometimes is I feel annoyed because I've got this big project I'm working on, and now I'm trying to, help them look at fractions or something.
Sure.
But then what I do is I take a step back and I have to remind myself the reason I'm working from home. I could do other things. I don't need to work from home. The reason I'm working from home is because I want to spend time with my kids, and that is my purpose. And so if I'm getting annoyed because my kids want to speak to me, like I just need to remember my point of being home in the first place is because I want to spend time with my kids. And then when I think that, then I think, oh yeah, and then I sit down and we go over their homework and we do what we need to do, and then I get back to my project. So I think you don't necessarily need to have other careers in mind, but I think you need to have your goals, what keeps you ticking, your life goals in mind. And once you know that, then you can keep those goals, whether you're playing in the NFL or whether you're a lawyer or whatever, because you could stick true to your life goals.
Let me take a stab at this, Dr. Greg. So if you do number one and you become more well-rounded, more aware of what's going on in the world, more diversified in your skill set, when your career is over, you can find a replacement sport, so to speak, that allows you to still scratch the itch that you had when you were playing your sport, because you can still meet that motivation doing something else.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment?
It is. And the thing is that a lot of people, and you probably see this, when they get out of their sports, it's not only that they're let down because they're not playing football anymore, but I think honestly a lot of them have no clue what to do. Like they just have zero idea, and so they end up, maybe doing just scrambling around. But if you've kind of educated yourself and you're learning about money and you're learning about business and you're learning about other things, your head is always kind of, even in your subconscious, churning other ideas, and so the minute you're out of football, you think, hey, you know what, I've got some savings, I've got this drive, I'm going to give something else a stab, and your subconscious almost has like a plan B and C and D, because at least you have there's other things out there.
Agree. Totally agree. One of the things that's really critical for athletes to keep their jobs and to get big contracts and to win championships is when the money's on the line, when they need to score, when they need to make a play, they're able to make the play. What is your perspective on performance readiness for a competitor that allows some athletes and competitors to make the play, whereas some don't?
There's a universal concept, and I see this in sports, and I see this in business, and I see it in medicine. And the idea is, this is something I have to tell myself sometimes, if anyone could do it, you could do it. In other words, if it can be done, you could do it. If you know that someone is capable of achieving something, to making a difficult catch or a difficult play, then there's no reason to think that you can't do that. And I think, the problem is that I think a lot of people don't feel like they have control over their own destiny. And the thing I try to teach people is you do have control over your own destiny. You have control over your health. You have control over your performance. You have to decide whether you're going to put yourself out there for that play or not. I think people that often don't succeed fear that they don't have the skills, or they fear that they can't do it. But once you realize that if someone could do it, there's no reason you can't do it, then I think you can put yourself out there and make the play or give a difficult thing a shot. I mean, I like to use, I know this isn't sports, but I like to use a business example. You see people, they're CEOs of companies, or they've started a business or something else. You might initially think, well, there's no way in hell I could do that. But then you realize these people they're people just like you are and just like I am, and they hadn't done it before they did it, and now they're doing it. So if they could do it, there's no reason to think that I can't do it.
Well, that begs the question, why do some people take the challenge and take the risk and other people don't?
I honestly think that it's I hate to say it, but I think that some people have a certain amount of negativity or pessimism. There's some people, and you see this in life too, there's some people when they see a problem, their instinct, their gut is, I'm going to take this problem on, I can solve this problem. And there are other people, when they see a problem, they think of a million reasons the problem can't be solved. Well, it's too difficult. Oh, well, other people have tried, they couldn't do it. Well, it'll take too long, that's too expensive. And I think in life, you probably need both types of people working together, people that think it could be done and people that see the trouble. And, in sports, you certainly need some coaches that see the problem and know what problems they're going to face. But I think for players, you have to approach things not with a negative attitude, but with a positive attitude that there's a problem, I'm going to solve this problem. This is a difficult catch, I could do this. And not focus on the reasons you cannot do it. Leave that to the coaches.
Okay, so let's pretend that you're helping an athlete that's still competing and they're not being everything they can be because of fear. How do you coach somebody through fear? Because what you just shared about the universal concept is people that see that it's been done, believe they can do it too, they don't let fear be an obstacle for doing it, where others do use fear as an excuse not to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. I think what I usually do when I talk to people about this is I like to give specific examples of where either people in general have overcome this sort of performance fear or where the athlete themselves have overcome this performance fear. I mean, you could find things where you didn't think you could do something and then you did it. And it's a reminder that the reason you were able to do it is, number one, you were willing to give it a try. You didn't just give up. But number two, you recognize that it's an achievable thing. Anything that is achievable, you could achieve. The only things you can't do are things that cannot be done. You can't jump to the moon. That's just not possible. Humans can't do that. But things that can be done, like bungee jumping, you could do it. I'm not telling you to do it, but you can. Anything that people can do, you could do. And so as long as you recognize that so-and-so did it, they're a person just like you. They're the same age as you. They've done the same training as you. If they've been able to do it, there's no reason that you can't do it.
Okay, that should be a motto. Anything people can do, you can do too.
Right. And I really believe it. I mean, look around you. Look at all the people that are coaches or agents or doctors or anyone else. They're not doing anything superhuman. They're doing things that other people have done, but they made the decision that they were going to do it, and they allowed themselves to be out there and not be intimidated by other people who have already done this. I think that the trouble is you don't want to let yourself get intimidated because someone else is already doing something. They didn't do it before they chose to do it. They didn't get intimidated.
I think different people choose to approach fear differently. Some people have fear and then they come up, like you shared before, with the half glass, the glass is half full, a million different ways how they can overcome it, and they can do it. Other people are more predisposed to being negative, like you shared, and when they have fear, all of a sudden it grows legs and arms and becomes a monster, and they don't do it. So I'm digging deeper. I want to dig deeper on this fear thing. If you're a person that instinctively sees the world as, the glass is half empty approach, and you kind of have a negative overtone to things, but you want to change. You want to be different. You want to be like your friend or your colleague that is more positive. How does a person change? What action can they take to change?
Well, it's interesting. This is actually a fascinating topic. If you had asked me this a couple of years ago, I would probably tell you that if you're a glass half empty person, that's just the way you are, and you should accept it. And you should go to a career where that's good to be, like, for example, accountants and things like that, because you're able to see problems with things. But I now believe that you actually can change this. And I'll give you an example. I think that people that are these glass half empty people, the people that see the problem with everything, I think that cuts across most things in their lives. In other words, it's not just that they don't think they can make the play on the field, but they also maybe don't think that they're going to be able to raise their kids. They see the problems with it. They don't think that they're going to be able to do this investment. They don't think that they're going to be able to do all kinds of stuff. And they see the problems and the challenges with everything. It's not just on the field, it's off the field too. And I do believe now that you could, to some degree, reprogram yourself. And I think one of the big ways to do it is with gratitude. I know this sounds kind of, wishy-washy, or it sounds soft, but the truth is that when you have gratitude, when you can intentionally look at the good things in life in general, and I think that this changes your outlook on everything. So in other words, at the end of the day, and I tell everybody to do this, even the glass half full people, and I in fact do this myself, at the end of the day before going to bed, even if it's not a good day, I force myself to think, what were the things that happened today that made me happy, that worked out well? Usually I try to come up with some big things. Well, I did close that deal. And maybe I'll try to come up with some little things. Like, I tried that new coffee and it was great, much better than I expected. And what I find, and this is actually evidence-based, is when you focus on these good things, you're able to kind of reframe your thinking. And your thinking is more on the good stuff and it's less on the bad stuff. So what I would tell someone is, if you're a glass half empty person, work on it on the field, but you actually need to work on it in everything. You need to make sure in life in general, if you go to a restaurant, you don't necessarily like your meal, but that drink was damn good. Focus on the fact that the drink is really good and how you're glad about that. And when you do that, you're actually able to shift your thinking in across all kinds of disciplines.
That's a great point. I think it's really difficult to have separate lives for an athlete, one that they display on the field and one that they display at home. I think they spill over. And if you're a champion on the field, but you're not really good in school, eventually you're going to get better at school if you apply the same principles that helped you be good on the field, and vice versa. Contrastingly, if you can't make a play on the field, you're probably not getting your homework done if you're in high school or college, whatever it may be. Or you may not be getting your bills paid if you're in the pros. You're not getting things done on the field. Is that a fair statement or not?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's always exceptions. You can always find people that break that rule, but I agree. I think your success on the field is going to mirror a lot of your success in life. And particularly, though, your attitude on the field is going to mirror your attitude in life. People that have a can-do attitude on the field, they're going to have a can-do attitude with their family. The people that are successful in the field are the people that believe that if they're going to take on a project that's totally different, like they're going to rebuild a car from scratch, for example, they believe they can do it. Because they have that getting to yes attitude. If you've never built a car, from parts before, rebuilding a car, but you just have this confidence in yourself that you can find a solution to things. If you take that project on, you're going to get it done. And so I do agree that this attitude crosses most parts of your life.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.